So ESPN has been grading WWE's premium live events, and then they just stopped. No announcements, no explanation. They just quietly removed letter grades from their PLE reports on their ESPN website. Now, why would a massive media company suddenly stop doing something they've been doing for every other sport? I think you might already know why based on previous videos. So let's get to it.
You are guest.
We are here talking about the ESPN letter grades, which at this point I'm just laughing because this is the softest behavior I've ever seen. They are getting massively butthurt about some of the grading that they're getting for their recent PLE events. But guess what? They aren't the worst ones there, but for some reason, it's still not enough. But anyway, all right, here's the backstory for anyone who missed it. When WWE moved its premium live events to ESPN, the first show on the platform was Wrestlepalooza. Now, originally, when they announced the deal with ESPN, they were supposed to start in 2016 with WrestleMania 42. But for some reason, because they just want to move up on it, they decided to terminate the contract in some shape or form with Peacock and start streaming on ESPN starting in September with Wrestlepalooza. Now, interesting choice, but it was fine. The show went well. There were some issues with, as you know, with the technical failures of ESPN and some of the issues people had logging in. They weren't able to log in properly, so on and so forth. But anyway, ESPN's website, like they do for UFC events, like they do for every other major event, gave it a letter grade. Now, what's that grade? A C. A straight up C they gave Wrestlepalooza, and they say, the excellence of the Care vs. Sky, Io Sky's match, saved this show from being truly average. It was a phenomenal display inside the square circle. Everything else was either underwhelming, the short Rhodes McIntyre match, or a setup for a future match, Lesnar dominating Cena. For a card that promised to have epic moments, felt a little short of expectations. Now, that's not a falling grade, but it's basically ESPN telling millions of people, yeah, this was a mid-event. And it was. And look, if the show was mid, the show was mid. Simple, straightforward. That's what journalism is supposed to be. But here's where it gets interesting. Crown Jewel came next, and they got a B. Okay, improvement. But then, the grades just disappeared recently. ESPN kept writing PLE reports. They still are writing PLE reports, my apologies, but the letter grades, at least for WWE, are gone. Vanish. No announcement. No, hey, we're changing our format. Just poof. And here's what's wild. And I'm going to share this with you. UFC events on ESPN are still getting letter grades to this day. UFC 326. And that one got a letter D minus. So this is what I mean. Like, this UFC got a D minus, and they're crying about B's and C minuses over here. Like, that makes sense. They're getting the better grade out of the two combat sports, but whatever. Anyway, they're still getting letter grades to this day, so it's not like ESPN decided, you know what, letter grades aren't our thing anymore. Nah. They specifically stopped grading WWE. And before you say, well, maybe WWE told them to stop, hold it up. Because the sources are saying this was ESPN's decision, not WWE's. Which honestly, that might be worse. I honestly don't believe it. I think based on the whole issues with WWE and ESPN not getting the tracking they have and the whole civil lawsuit happening with members not getting ESPN when they were supposed to, I think they're just trying backpedal. So yeah, ESPN has removed letter grades from its WWE PLE reports. The first suggestion that ESPN drop PLE grades from its coverage because it was making waves between ESPN and WWE came last week, courtesy of Wrestling Observer and Post Wrestling, has followed up on initial reports claiming multiple sources have confirmed the letter grades were phased out due to the issues that arose from those first PLEs on ESPN. So Wrestlepalooza and Wrestlepalooza and Crown Jewel. And don't get me wrong, for Crown Jewel, it was better than Wrestlepalooza. The match that saved it obviously was Cena and AJ Styles, but well, The C grade awarded from Wrestlepalooza was followed by a B for Crown Jewel, and since then, while the reports have kept on coming, the letter grades have been omitting from ESPN Online reports. Interestingly, even though UFC is also owned by WWE's parent company TKO, the ESPN reports will still include grades. That's likely due to there being no conflict of interest, and UFC's events are now shown on Paramount, not ESPN, which I'm like, whatever, what does that mean? So here, this is the Wrestlepalooza report from September 21st. That was when Wrestlepalooza, and they were like the best match, ironically, at least for ESPN, was Baker versus Io Sky for the Women's World Championship. It got a B+, then it got then Usos versus Division, C, then C, even Cody versus Drew was a C. C- for John Cena versus Brock Lesnar, which was the main event. And there you go, final grade, C. And then Crown Jewel, this was the Nets PLE. A, see, that was the best match. That up the average grade. You can welcome Cena and AJ Styles. Yeah, so apparently this week, Ryusuke, they decided to remove the letter grading. Now, does it mean the old reports are going to remove it? Of course not, because it's already out there. So they're saying anything going forward are not getting a grade. So WWE Crown Jewel gets a B. And this is UFC 326, which happened last weekend. And that got B+ and a few B's and a C+ and a C. What made it go down all the way to a D-? That's weird. Oh, this D+? This D-? Oh, the band. Damn. Okay, so, and an F? What? BMF title fight, Max Holloway versus Charles. Okay, wasn't that? Oh, man. So yeah, when a highly anticipated BMF. So the main event underwhelmed with an F. Wow. So let's talk about the business side, because that's where the story really lives. WWE's premium live events are exclusively on ESPN. In the United States, to be exact. That means ESPN is paying WWE a lot of money to be the home of these events. And when your own platform and when your own shows don't work out, the platform people are paying to watch these shows on gives a show C, that's a problem. Not because the grade was wrong, but because now you've got a conflict of interest. ESPN is supposed to be a journalistic outlet that covers sports objectively, but they're also the platform that needs you to subscribe and watch these WWE events. So now they have two things to worry about. They can't be objectively saying it down the middle, because they now have to make sure people watch. If you say negatively about the show, they won't get subscriptions on ESPN Plus. So you can quite understand what the dilemma is. So how do you objectively grade a product that you're also trying to sell? Now, the official line, both WWE and ESPN said there were no hard feelings about the Wrestlepalooza grade. But according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter and multiple other sources from Post Wrestling, those grades were phased out because of the discomfort those early grades caused, like I read in the other article. Multiple sources confirmed and noticed UFC events on ESPN still get graded, but UFC moved to Paramount. So all their live events, all the UFC number, series, and so on and so forth is on ESPN. There's no conflict of interest there anymore. So they can say whatever they want, and they don't have to worry about subscriptions, at least in the UFC end. ESPN doesn't need to protect UFC's reputation because they're not the ones airing it. Think about it. Now, I want you to know where you stand on this. So let me know in your comments. Let me know in the comments, I apologize. Do you think ESPN was right to remove the grades? Or is it just corporate cowardice? And if you're rocking with our channel, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, as we are going to keep breaking these stories down as we get more of these ESPN stories. So with that, let's continue. Here's my issue with this whole thing. Removing the letter grades doesn't mean ESPN can't still be honest. They still can write a review that says this show was bad, or if this show was amazing, or this show was mid. They can still criticize WWE. The reports still exist, but let's be real. A letter grade is the one thing people share. Nobody's sharing the third paragraph of an ESPN article. They're sharing that big fat C at the top. That's the biggest thing that came out of Wrestlepalooza, besides everyone saying the show was mid. Is like, oh, did you see what ESPN wrote? They wrote a C. Why is the C? Well, go check it out. Because no one remembers exactly what they said word for word. All they can do is say the obvious things, or the key things they can remember. So when you remove that letter, the most visible, most easily shareable, most impactful part of that coverage, what message does that send? It sends the message that the business relationship matters more than an honest take. And I'm not even blaming WWE here at this point. If I'm WWE, yeah, I don't want my streaming partner grading my shows publicly. That's just business. But ESPN is supposed to be journalism. And when journalism starts editing itself to keep a business partner comfortable, that's becoming a slippery slope now, in their relationship especially. The irony is, if WWE was putting on consistent bangers, banger after banger after banger, nobody would care about the grades anymore. The C wouldn't have been a story if the show didn't deserve a C. Maybe instead of worrying about who's grading you, put on shows that grade themselves. At the end of the day, this is the world we live in now. Media companies are also the platforms showing the media they're talking about. The people covering the product are the same people selling the product. And we as fans just have to be aware of that. So without further ado, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Does ESPN removing the grades change how you trust their WWE coverage? And is WWE putting too much pressure on their media partners, or is it just how business works? Drop your take below. Thank you for watching. If you got something out of this, smash that like button and subscribe to the Arrowstream. Remember, no soft behavior. Let's keep at it. And WWE, write better stories. See you later.